Hi,
Hello,
what's your name?
my name is Kanwal Neel.
Okay, and where and when were you born?
So I was born in Kenya, in Mombasa, in 1953.
Okay, and how did you arrive on the decision to move to Canada?
Well, it basically wasn't my decision, it was my parents' decision. So I had finished what they call O levels, and at that particular time in Kenya, basically what happens is parents of Indian ancestry have an option: either they send their children to England or to India for university education.
After grade 12?
After grade 12,
Okay.
equivalent to grade 12. Yeah,
Okay.
so it was the British system. And then my father decided that, I have one sister, one brother, that the whole family would migrate to Canada. And so he applied for immigration to migrate to Canada, and he was successful. He was a teacher. And then we all migrated to Canada in 1969.
Okay, and how old were you?
I was 16 at that time.
Okay.
I had, like I said, just finished my O-level. So when I came to Canada, I started in grade 11.
Okay.
Went to a school in Richmond here and did my high school graduation. And then I went to UBC. I got my first degree in Bachelor of Science in Computer Science and Mathematics. And then while I was here, lots of issues happened, and again, I was quite athletic. Used to compete in track and field. I competed for the Richmond Kajaks, and I also would compete in field hockey. I played for the UBC hockey team.
Nice.
And I also ran for UBC. And then about second or third year at university, injuries took over, and so I couldn't compete as much. So then I got into officiating and coaching. So
Okay.
I coached in track and field for the next 20 years, and officiating has been part of me, and I've been carrying on that even today. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later.
But before we get into that, I want to ask you, like, when you came to Canada,
Yes.
when I believe you took a flight from Kenya, right?
Yes.
Straight to Vancouver?
No, we actually stayed in England, London for a couple of weeks,
Okay.
and then we came to Vancouver.
Okay.
And basically, my father had done some research that there were a lot of, we didn't have any relatives or friends here in Canada.
Okay.
So didn't know anybody actually. Dad had a distant friend who came to pick us up at the airport, and we stayed with them for a day, and then we said, okay, we need to be independent. So for the first 2 weeks, we stayed at the Sikh Gurdwara on 2nd Avenue.
Okay.
That was one of the first Gurdwaras in, one of the first ones in North America. So we stayed there for 2 weeks, and I started my high school at Kitsilano Secondary School.
Okay.
And then, of course, within a few days, my dad got a teaching job in Richmond, and then we all moved to Richmond, and then I did my high school at Steveston Secondary School in Richmond.
Okay.
Lots of challenges,
Yeah.
yes.
Can you tell us something
Sure.
about the challenges,
So-
especially that you must have faced while you started school over here?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting thing, but one of the big advantages we had was I had learned in the English medium, so language wasn't an issue. So I could speak English, so that wasn't an issue. So I wasn't put in any ESL classes. I was in regular classes, but just the way of knowing and learning was different. And everyone had lots of questions, and being naive of everything. Racism was there, but you try to find a few people that correlate with you. So I think one of the biggest things was, since I was athletic, so I had many athletes as my friends, so you form a nucleus of your own group of friends.
Very true.
And once I had the nucleus of friends, and those friends, I went to university with them, and so it became another group of friends that you work with there.
Yeah, that does make a difference.
It does, yeah.
Okay, so if you want to summarize, your first 5 years in Canada,
Yeah.
like,
I would, say more than 5, maybe about 10 years.
yeah, sure,
Yeah, I would call it knowing the land. Okay, so you get to know the land, get to know the people, get to know the community, and you form members of different communities. So you have one as the Punjabi Sikh community.
Yeah.
Mom and dad were quite involved in the Punjabi Sikh community in Kenya, so they came to Canada, and then they started teaching Punjabi language. So we would go there, learn that, go to the Gurdwara, go to, well, when we first started at 2nd Avenue, when we came, and then it moved to Raw Street Gurdwara. So we would go there. There weren't many Gurdwaras. There was the Akali Singh Gurdwara, so that's one community. Then the second community was your local friends that you form. And then my athletic community became a big community. And then in 1972, I formed with a group of friends, we formed a Bhangra group team here.
Okay.
So Punjab,
at university or?
it was outside the university.
Okay.
So it was called Punjab Cultural Association. So that was one of the first Bhangra teams in Canada.
Okay.
And then in 1974, a group of 8 of us were invited to perform at the World Expo in Spokane.
Okay.
So we went there,
Wonderful.
we performed there, and we would perform at PNE, we would perform at different organizations.
Very nice.
So which was a nice camaraderie.
Yeah.
So
how did the people used to, react to that? Like, you got good feedback?
we got great feedback, except one incident happened. There was some racism in Fort St. John.
Oh, okay.
So they invited us, Bhangra group, to perform there. And we drove for 20 hours to perform in Fort St. John. We go there and we are ready to perform. And then a fight broke out between the Punjabi community and the First Nations community.
Oh my gosh.
It was in a big community hall, and they were all drunk and things.
Yeah.
So we performed for about a minute, and then we got back in our van and we came home. And the funny thing was, it was really nothing. Somebody had said something and it took it the wrong way,
Yeah.
and that's what happened. So that's what I would call knowing the land. From about 69 to 79, I got my first teaching job in 1977.
Okay.
I had finished my degree in mathematics, so started teaching math. And this is what I call, that you start to get your feet wet. And also in 1978, I had gone in the ranks with the officiating. I officiated at the Commonwealth Games in Edmonton.
Okay.
And over the years, I've officiated at World Championships and 3 other Commonwealth Games too.
Wonderful.
So that was my journey. So that's what I would basically summarize my first 10 years as getting to know and getting to be part of that community. I think one question I always ask myself, so when did I start feeling Canadian? Right?
Yeah, it's a very good question.
So I think sitting at the opening ceremony in Edmonton, I look around and here I am representing Canada as an official and giving back to the community already. I have a job, I have become a professional, and I am doing something, giving back to the community. I think that was my first inkling, you know what, I belong here.
Yeah.
And this is part of me being a Canadian.
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
Another thing I wanted to ask you is that, again related to your first 10 years.
Yes.
How was the community life? Like, did you used to celebrate Indian festivals like the Indian community over here? How big was it? And, like festivals like, say, Diwali or Vaisakhi?
Yeah. So the community was really small here.
Okay.
And
here you mean like Richmond and Vancouver area?
I'm in Richmond and Vancouver. Surrey was unknown at that time.
Okay.
Hardly anyone lived there. And people who did live in Surrey or Abbotsford, and things like that.
Okay.
So Vancouver was the hub.
Okay.
Main Street was the hub. And there used to be Diwali functions there. And basically what happened was the community was so small that each one of the Gurdwaras would basically celebrate a specific special Gurdwara. For example, the Raw Street Khalsa Diwan Society would do Guru Nanak Dev Ji's Gurpurb.
Okay.
And then there would be track events with that, sporting events. Victoria would do the Vaisakhi Mela. And so people would travel there. And then another Gurpurb would be done in Abbotsford, and another one would be done in New Westminster. So community went around to different Gurdwaras.
Yeah,
and this happened for about the first 10 years we were there. And then also, we would all do things together. The Hindus, the Muslims, they would all come to the Gurdwara. Because the community was really together. There was no separate thing. And then in the mid-70s, then the Hindu community got their own temples, their mandirs. The Muslim community started getting their own masjids, the mosque, and so the community got larger, and then they would kind of, work in different areas.
Okay. That's very good to hear. And another thing I wanted to ask you is that, you already mentioned that, like, for example, in Fort St. John, the community started to fight. But how were the relations of the Punjabi community and the First Nations in the Vancouver area?
So Vancouver area, they were basically really isolated. They
Okay.
didn't have much to do with each other. But I personally had a lot of interaction with First Nations community later on as my career developed.
Okay.
And maybe I can go on to the next 10 years.
Yeah,
So
sure.
next 10 years is, I would call, is now you're starting to harvest the land.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
So first and this is where you grow your seeds. And I became a little bit more involved in the BC math teachers community. And by the end of the second, in the late 80s, early 90s, I had become quite involved in the education community.
Okay.
So Simon Fraser University brings in educators for 2 years as faculty associates to work with student teachers. So I was fortunate to do that 89 to 91. So I went there.
So earlier you was teaching in...
I was teaching in a high school.
High school, and then you shifted to...
Then I shifted to
okay.
SFU for 2 years only.
Oh, okay.
So what happens is they bring you in, you work with mentoring these teachers, and you start thinking about your own practice. And I'm going, you know what? I have my classes, kids sitting in rows, they are all bored. What do I do to change?
Yeah.
So I started changing. I started using lots of hands-on materials, lots of activities, and started really changing the way I taught. And this led to an opportunity that in 93, they were finding that a lot of people were not graduating because math was a very difficult subject. And they were really having a difficult time learning math. So they said, we need to develop a television series where we can teach them math, but in a really
interactive way. Yeah.
So I had a co-host. So what we would do is we would teach, show a problem, teach the math, solve the problem. So we did 16 half-hour shows with that. It was called The Math Shop, and this was aired in 93, and it basically opened the spectrum for me. So when I went to audition for this show, and the first thing was, you know, who is this guy who's not even a Gora? You know? And it was a challenging thing. So the director basically, it was teach us the slope of a line. So I took the shoestring out of my shoes and showed how slope varied.
Yeah.
And he goes, I finally get it. So first they hired me as a consultant, then they hired me as the on-camera host. And that really opened doors for me. A lot of people learned, and it really became good for our young generations to see that, you know what, we can have opportunities if we develop on those opportunities. So my show was syndicated in 6 countries, and it was shown all across Canada.
Okay.
And
on which channel?
On the Knowledge Network.
Okay.
And then the Ontario Knowledge Network, and I know people in Mexico had bought rights.
Okay.
And people across the US were showing that show. Yeah, it was really good. It was a good opportunity. And that opened doors for me to kind of do things a little bit differently. So now after 91, I returned to the school system, so I was back teaching in the high school. And then later on, I became the president of the BC Math Teachers Association.
Oh, okay.
So I'm talking about harvesting now. So what I'm doing is I'm traveling across the province, and I'm seeing that the First Nations students aren't doing as well as all the other students. So it became a passion of mine how Aboriginal students could do better in math. So I'm starting to think, you know, how can we change the curriculum? How can we do things differently? So I became one of the co-authors of the Math Makes Sense, the textbook series. Okay. And that's the textbooks that is still used today in teaching math in high school. So which was a really good opportunity for me to do that. So 82, I got married. So my wife, originally from Thailand, also from Sikh family. We got married, and in 84 we had our first child, and in 86 we had our second child. 2 daughters, born here, grew up here, and at the same time you have that parallel thing where you want to teach them Punjabi, you want them to be Canadians.
Mix of both.
Exactly. And it's a challenge.
It's a challenge.
It's a real challenge. And then in 99 was the 300th anniversary of the Khalsa. And so we 6 families formed an organization called Vancouver Sikh Spirit. Okay. And we got the children to sing and recite in English and Punjabi. So we produced a CD, a music CD, looking at how Sikhism can be taught to kids here. So which was a a project of passion, and we did that, and those children are now adults, and so it was a wonderful opportunity for them to be involved in the community and grow with that. And at the same time, I kept on officiating, kept on teaching, and then after teaching, and then 2002, I decided, well, you know what, I've been thinking about the Aboriginal communities, what can I do to make a difference? So I started my doctorate program at SFU.
Okay. So doctorate again in mathematics?
Again, mathematics education.
Education, okay.
So I basically shifted my thinking a little bit, and I did my, the next few years. So now I returned full-time in 2004 in SFU again. I did my doctorate, finished my doctorate in 2008. And my focus was spending lots of time in a place called Haida Gwaii, which is in northern British Columbia. It's an island off the coast of British Columbia.
Okay.
And I basically studied how the local people did mathematics in the day-to-day life. So when you talk to an elder, they say, we don't do math. But
are there a lot of Aboriginals in
yes, mostly 80% is Aboriginal.
Okay.
They are from the Haida Nation. So, and then when you kind of found out intuitively, like how do they make a totem pole? So they had profound knowledge of three-dimensional geometry, they knew measurement, they knew how to work on the land. So then I started using those materials, brought it into the curriculum. And instead of teaching geometry from the abstract part, we taught it from their curriculum, from their culture, and then you embedded, for example, a button blanket. A button blanket is the all Haida make, and it is a gift given to a Haida when they graduate, but then they have the integrated geometry and geometric patterns. So I started looking at the patterns and seeing how those patterns can be developed into the curriculum. So I started looking at those things. So anyway, so I'm at SFU, I started doing this, and then I worked with the Stolo Nation in the Chilliwack area. I worked with the Squamish Nation in Whistler area and developed resources for them. And that was another one of my passions, and I worked with that.
I know that's really wonderful that you did so much for the community.
Well, you know what? This was harvesting the land and now sowing the seeds again. So I'm starting to work with student teachers again, teaching them, and also working within our own community in how we can develop our knowledge, our histories. And I'll digress a little bit. So in 1989 was the 75th anniversary of the Komagara Maru incident, and I kind of spearheaded with 5 gurdwaras here, and we got the plaque done in downtown, and we started getting the main community at large educated about it, working with the federal, the provincial, the municipal levels. We had a dedication ceremony at Portal Park. And then when you fast forward 25 years, in 2014, when the centennial of this event happened, then it had become a mainstream event. You know, everyone wanted to talk about it, everyone wanted to be part of the apology, and so which was a wonderful thing. So, you know, a few of others had started, you know, developing that, you know, how do we infuse that sense of pride in the community and remember the history, but at the same time do it in a mainstream way, not just an isolated Sikh event, but as a Canadian event, and moving forward as a Canadian event.
Very nice. Very nice.
So it's good.
Good. So anything else you want to share with us?
Well, you know what? I think I count my blessings, you know, and so now after that harvesting and then, you know, reaping the fruits that you have done. And then I think the critical piece is how do you keep on not forgetting your roots, but you have the fruits of that labor that you've had, but keep on moving forward.
Very true.
And moving forward in a very genuine and a way of keeping mindful of where our community is. As you see, you know, even today, south of the border, things can change overnight.
Yeah.
So you have to be mindful of having a voice having a voice of courage, having a voice of reason, but at the same token, being mindful that on this Mother Earth, we are guests.
Yeah.
And we are guests here for a short period of time, and do make a difference in whatever way you can. So I still continue to make a difference in the track and field community. Most recently, I was recognized in a couple of places. Kanwal Neel University had given me an honorary doctorate for the work I'd done in the community, and the Richmond Sports have recognized me in their Sports Wall of Fame in the officials category. So it's not those recognitions, but you keep on doing these things and being an active member in the community, and a contributing member in the community. I know our community is very large, but if there is one of the lessons that I've learned is be mindful and keep on doing it. So most recently I've been involved in a project called Friends of Simon at Simon Fraser University. It's an outreach project where we have university students that go out and mentor and tutor immigrant and refugee children. And they come from Syria, they come from Africa, they come from India, they come from Nepal. So our main goal is, how do we make these newcomers feel welcome in Canada? And also, it's a reciprocal thing, right? Those of us who have made it, how do we learn from them also? It's not just us giving it to them, but us learning from them also. So we keep on learning from them and find out what is it that we want to learn, and keep it, making it as a thriving and a community that grows together. That's I think the essence of who we should be.
That's a really beautiful thought.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and do you have any like old photographs or artifacts?
Yes, I do have some.
Okay, so let's scan them after the interview.
I'd be happy to share them with you.
Okay, but thank you so much for taking out the time and sharing your story with us.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a really good addition to our project.
Thank you. Thank you very kindly.